And then lastly, this last vacation story for today. One of the places I visited was Lugano, Switzerland. And this is really a disturbing story that made me physically nauseous when I observed it. We took a boat ride over to a little, like a hill town. And by hill town, I mean literally it's on the side of a cliff on a hill. It's just a very small town called Gandria. And on the way back, we were on one of these boats that has like a few levels. And we had gotten enough sun that day. So about halfway through the trip, we walked down into the covered area of the boat where there's kind of like an aisle down the middle, and there's seats facing each other on either side of the aisle. There was a group of about 10, some of whom seemed to be related, who were hanging out there. And I look over and I notice what seems to be a kid that looks to be about 11 or 12 years old, very touchy-feely with an individual that looked to be about 25 years old. And something about it struck me as odd. And I continue watching them, and eventually the 11 or 12-year-old kid has his head in the lap of the 25-year-old in a way that seems to me not unsexual. There was something sexual about it. And I continue watching, and I observe that the 25-ish-year-old starts touching the 11-year-old's chest and then moving his hands down to the kid's belly button and moving his hands down to where he is very clearly fondling an 11-year-old's penis on the boat. Now, at this point, I become a little bit disturbed as to what's going on, because no matter what the situation is, there's a 25-year-old and there's a kid who clearly is no older than 12, may have only been 11 years old. I start listening to the conversation going on behind me, and I hear a conversation. They are the family that was involved that had the 25-year-old and the 11-year-old were not speaking English. They appeared to be speaking an Asian language of some kind. And the individuals behind me were speaking a very British English, and they were saying, "We go back to London tomorrow, and then they go back to Sri Lanka next week." So we're dealing with a group, a Sri Lankan family or traveling group of some kind. So I continue observing these two individuals, and when the boat docks, they get up, and the 25-year-old is standing behind the 11 or 12-year-old, hip to hip, and they're making contact. They're clearly grinding. It's clearly the type of thing you would observe if you were in a sexual position. Do you understand what I'm saying, Louis?
I definitely understand what you're saying, yeah.
And this continues, and we ended up getting off the boat. Now, I said, I need to do something. There's clearly abuse. This kid clearly is being touched sexually. His penis was being fondled. I need to do something. And then I said, well, what am I going to do? I don't know who these people are. There's really no police around here. I mean, it doesn't appear to be a crime area of any kind. Who do I talk to? Then it's hearsay. How do I identify these people? What do I do? I don't really know what to do. And I ended up doing nothing. And the situation sickened me. Afterwards, I did a little bit of research, and I was reminded that there was an Arthur C. Clarke story I read. Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction author, lived in Sri Lanka for a long time. And he wrote about what were relationships between men and boys that were not considered sexual relationships per se. But they were considered kind of like mentorship relationships in Sri Lanka that included sexual type touching. I have no idea at all if when he wrote about that, he was not writing about something specific he had observed, but broadly about something that is part of the culture in Sri Lanka. I have no idea, but that's something that came to mind. I don't know what was going on. It didn't seem right to me, Louis, and the situation was truly disgusting.
I don't know what to say about that. That's crazy. I don't know. I don't know what I would have done, but if I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think I wouldn't stand up and physically intervene, but I don't know.
That would have crossed your mind to physically intervene if you saw that?
I'd have to gauge it out, maybe. Yeah. I mean, certainly when you're describing it to me, it did cross my mind.
It's one of these things where it clearly seems like abuse, and I can't imagine any cultural norms after hearing that they were from Sri Lanka that would have made it okay. But I don't know. I froze, maybe, is what it is. And I don't know. I don't feel good about the entire thing, obviously. And I would love to hear from people your thoughts on this situation.
And just because it's a cultural norm doesn't mean that morally it's okay. There are plenty of cultural norms that are completely repulsive and repugnant that should not exist at all anywhere.
No question about it. It was more the type of thing where from sitting across the boat, you start second guessing and saying, might I have missed something where if I had seen something different and understood some cultural norm, I might have a different opinion. And it's totally hypothetical, but you're absolutely right, Lewis, that so just because something is culturally acceptable does not mean that it is morally right. Let's take a break. We'll be back with plenty more right after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.